Good day, everyone. We're here to welcome Betty. Betty's going to give us a talk on last words on life as a woman in the ADB. I don't think I have. I need to explain or give you much about Betty. As you all know, Betty is a leading professional in the financial sector, in financial sector development and public management, with over 35 years of professional experience worldwide. She's a keen advocate for the IWC and goes through painstaking efforts to help improve the environment for women at ADB, which includes setting targets, promotions, coping with harassment, etc. Most importantly, she walks the talk, and she wants you all to understand that within her division, she's also promoted a lot of women in her team. We're going to miss Betty when she retires. Is it next week? But she will leave a legacy that will inspire us all. Her leadership skills and perseverance. Please welcome Betty Wilkinson.
Wasn't I just here? Some of you were also just here, but I had a different talk. And for those of you who weren't here, the talk on directors is now available on YouTube. And you can get a copy. If you're an IWC member, you can get a copy from your invitation. If you're not and you're a guy, you can ask any of the women in the room and they might let you have a copy of the access. So it's really hard for me to believe that I've been at ADB for 12 years. This is the longest place that I've worked in any of my career in my life. I was a 2 to 3 year mover. And it's even harder to believe that in 5 days, I will be leaving here. And I will retire from a place that has been so influential on my life, on my family, on my friends, and on my reality. And a big part of my reality is that I'm a woman. And so I want to talk a little bit about that part in the ADB. Now, I'm going to make a little segue and tell you that I've come by feminism quite honestly. And for those of you who missed my talk on feminism for Insight Thursday, you can see that on the video in the library. I'm not going to cover any of that stuff here. Apparently it was highly controversial. A lot of men complained about it. But what I will tell you now is that my great-by-3 grandmother was a demonstrator at Seneca Falls for the women's vote in the United States. And when her husband, who is a greengrocer, came home from selling vegetables in his cart in Buffalo, New York, he didn't know whether he would find her cooking dinner in the kitchen or in jail. So that blood is what runs in my veins. And it's driven me to speak out much more strongly on gender issues than I might otherwise have done. I think that has paid off in the ADB, although many people warned me off doing it and said, your career will suffer, you will not move, and you will not advance professionally. I guess that those people were at least a little bit proved wrong. For a while it did. And my career did stall at the beginning, but we have made some improvements here in the bank. So let's celebrate them and figure out what's next. I'm going to have to move. Can I ask you to help me? You'll click? Thanks, Rita, for helping me click. See, this is how women are. They just offer to help, right? Okay, so in this talk, this is the outline of my talk. I'm going to share with you my perception of the state of gender in 2003, when the then Professional Women's Committee, what they worked on and how it worked. I'm going to talk about the business case for gender equity, which I'm sure you all know, but it keeps getting stronger. The role of statistics and how they help us show the reality, not the rumors. What the essentials are now, in my view, and what the millennials and others will need to take on as I depart next week. Now, I want to quote from the UN in 2003 that said, "Achieving gender equality is a grindingly slow process, since it challenges one of the most deeply entrenched of all human attitudes." So that was the UN in 2003. And when I joined the ADB in 2003, Beijing Plus 10 was coming. The donors were pushing in ADF and other consultations for gender incorporation into all the projects work that donors were doing and we were doing. There's a lot of pushback here on why worry about women when we're building roads and bridges. We are coming off the push for 2,000 women by 200 women international staff by 2000, which was driven by the executive director for the United States at that time, Cinnamon Dornside, who made it her business that this was going to happen and pushed the organization relentlessly to do so. And she's actually, by the way, still involved in ADB as one of the board members for ADBI. The 2003 External Forum Report said, and this is one of the very first reports of the External Forum on Gender, the EFG has expressed concern in the past about the small number of women at senior levels and in the board of directors, and about ADB's institutional culture, which may inhibit efforts to recruit, retain, and promote more professional women. So that was 2003. I had a woman director, Noi, who replaced the woman who hired me and was promoted, who was Shamsha Doctor. Some of you will know her. The women from the PwC helped coach me on the entry. They actually called me and said, we can help you. We're happy to support you. This is how you should negotiate your contract. And they were my best and most important mentors and advocates. And some of you may know them. Andrea Ifland was one of them. And another was a woman named Lynette Mallory. Women managers said, bring me in as an IS5 because I had director experience. But the HR director general said, no, we only bring in women as level 4. And that was 12 years ago. And remember, because support staff are overwhelmingly women, this paints a recurrent picture that women are somehow there to serve, and they are less. So this was 2003. It's tragic, awful. And Deloitte's Women's Initiative in early 2004, which we picked up and started pushing with the bank management, is make sure that senior management is front and center to support this, make an airtight business case for cultural change, let the world watch you, begin with dialogue as the platform for change, and use a flexible system of accountability. So in 2004, we're already talking about these things, right? Okay. So then, as a group, we were really active. So what did we work on and what worked? We talked about advocacy, networking, HR partnership, and then we did it. We did a lot of plans. We did informal meetings. We went to people's houses for drinks. We talked about the HR women and who could influence us. And I have to tell you that many of the most important changes that have been made here is because Susan Kerr, Rosario Abed Santos, Mary Clark, and Ann Rennie pushed them forward and made sure they were real. We dreamed of options that would change the culture. And then we went after that list assertively over the next few years. We did a lot of analytics. We talked to members. We did studies. This Especially Without Pay got a lot better for us in terms of opportunities. And we pushed against the pushback. So when I came here, people were still saying, you're the woman, can you pour the coffee? Can you do the meeting minutes? We got rid of all that. We said, I'm sorry, we don't do that. We're professional officers just like you. Women is only quota fillers. There was a lot of pushback on the quotas. There was even as late as 2012. We consistently proved the merit of our work and our value as officers and as professionals and as managers. And that they would out women who didn't perform. So we started outing the men who didn't perform and said, look, see, this guy's also not doing his job, and so's that one not doing his job, and so's that one not doing his job. So did you allow them to continue working because of a quota? Because, you think that there should be a male quota? And we found men who would support us. And, some of them are sitting in the room today and saying, this is important to us. See those people? Keep an eye on them for later. Okay? That's important. They are important. And we did have some real successes in this, 12 years. Flex Time startup. Flex Time was a huge battle. The head of the staff council went to go and see a person who shall be unnamed, but was a very senior VP. And he said, this is only an issue for a few white women. Flex time is not important. So the IWC, then PwC, did a survey. And they found out that, in fact, all 80+% of the women in the bank wanted this. And 2 weeks later, he reversed his position and flex time was introduced. So that's how it's happened. That's what the history is. Last wave. We have a lot of new hires. We have a lot more women at level 7 and 8 than in our history in the past. This is a really important change. In 2012, 54% of the hires were female. An ombud. The ombudsman has been fought for over 25 years. It was the IWC and the push from professional women in the bank that finally got this across the table. You should be proud of that. That's an important change here. Champions and gender action plans. None of that was even considered, and there was heavy fighting against it. And they do exist now. There's mixed results, okay? But you know what? It's on the table. It's important. Public and frequent data on gender and trends. There's no more excuses now because the data is in the public domain. It's all out there. Every quarter you can see the data. You can see what's been happening. There's tables that show us what's been happening since 1990. And some of the people in the room, Claire Wee, Kathleen Moten, Carmela Loxon, many others, these are now heads of department, unknown for many, many years in this building. But there are areas that continue not to move, and they're also important. And perhaps they are the most important. Ownership from the top. Every president has been asked for a gender advisor, and every president refuses. Quotas. When we had them in 2000, they worked. When we had them in 2010, 11, 12, they worked. When we abandon them, everything falls apart. So we have, in end of 2012, a recruitment level of 54% women. As of date, we have a recruitment of 26% women this year. Really? In 2 years, it fell apart, just like that. Women as a bank presence on the board, in top management, there is this huge gap. And now we're getting publicly embarrassed because of it. So Jeffrey Sachs tweets, and the entire intellectual community on the planet knows that we have all male panels. We don't have women. And I will tell you that there is a case of a very senior official who, when asked, why do you have only male vice presidents in this round, said, there are not sufficient qualified women. And yet, gee, the government of Canada yesterday announced their government, it's 50% women. And what's the population of Canada compared to the population of our emerging Asia? Really? 1 billion versus 40 million? What's going on there? Nice Canada. Nice job. Like the new prime minister. Okay. So ultimately, the culture here isn't changing enough. Women are seen too often as a necessary evil rather than valued partners and contributors. And as my brother said to me recently in talking about gender and how the bank does and what kinds of things he does, he said, like your use of Lotus 1, 2, 3 systems, it's so 1977, this approach. Right? Okay. And then there's a fundamental issue that management doesn't think gender equity is a problem worthy of their attention and action. Now, how do we know this? Because the gender numbers are collapsing 2 years after we had record highs. And if lending or disbursements had this happen, there would be weekly meetings about what to do and heavy pressure to do it right away. And in fact, right now, the management they're all having these meetings about disbursements and about commitments. Everybody knows, right? But when was the last time there was a meeting saying, our gender numbers are half what they were 2 years ago? Maybe we have a problem here that we need to address. Okay, so now let's talk about the research. The research is clear, and there's more and more of it showing why women managers are essential for good business. A recent study revealed, so this is all 2015 study releases. Recent study revealed that an even gender split at one company created 41% increase in revenue, a major Fortune 500 company. Off-cited research by Catalyst says that countries with higher female representation in top management outperform those that don't by delivering 34% greater returns. Okay. And although only 5% of the Fortune 1000 companies have a female CEO, those CEOs generate 7% of the Fortune 1000's total revenue, and they outperform the S&P during the course of their tenures. So, they're better at this. Okay. So McKinsey, in a major study this year released, says women need to act with confidence to get ahead. But when they do, they face a potential backlash. To understand this double bind, we must understand two types of stereotypes. One type is called descriptive, stereotypes about what people are likely to do. The other is prescriptive, stereotypes about what people should do. Women are particularly burdened by prescriptive stereotypes. They are expected to be warm, deferential, and undemanding. This prescriptive stereotype worldwide and the double bind it creates limits the ability of women to compete effectively. So Women in the Workplace, which is a mutual study of Lean In and also McKinsey, found that for numerous reasons, women are simply less likely than men to advance. They experience an uneven playing field, with their odds of advancement lower at every level. Women currently in the bank, level 4. Men average in the bank, level 5. There's a persistent leadership gap in the most senior roles. How many women on the board? How many women in VPs? Gender diversity is not widely believed to be a priority. And while employee programs designed to help balance work and family are abundant, participation is low among both sexes due to concerns that using them will negatively affect their careers. So this and many other reports suggested that what is needed in all organizations, public or private, quotas, gender-blind recruitment, better behavior, business not the locker room, cross-gender mentoring arrangements, and representative of both genders in all meetings, teams, public representations of the organizations. All, not just once in a time. Ultimately for us, we are actively and forcefully pressing our developing member countries for gender equity and economic opportunity and governance. How can we expect them to take this message seriously when the photographs of our management and board are all male? When women in management are too few, not in the core areas, and when we have no pipeline of women team leaders to work with our clients. I do thank my stars that there's a younger generation of men who realize that gender imbalance is a terrible tax on their own opportunities. And people like Lee Kun-jin, the new head of AIIB, who early on helped ADB women to start to make those changes here because he had a daughter who was being discriminated against. And Klaus Gerhauser, who not only appointed women managers, but did it in large numbers, and in areas like energy and transport, where male managers said there are no qualified women. I'm laughing now because these women managers are the top performers across the bank. So statistics are available every quarter on the ADB website. I watch them. You should too. And they do tell some great stories along with some sad ones. I will start by telling you the problems with the stats. They include directors' advisors who are political appointees and thus should be held as board, not staff. And by the way, that's also true in the budget. Please be aware of this. The statistics also include women who have taken special leave without pay and those on terminal leave. None of these three groups performs bank operational functions, and thus I believe that their numbers should be omitted so we have an honest view of what IS women actually work here. Now let's talk about some interesting trends. Flat zones, for years and years the same or more or less the same, followed by great leaps forward. 1990 to 1995, we were flat. Then from 1996 to 2004, we leaped to 250 from 70. 2005 to 2009, we're flat at 250. Then we make a leap in 2010 to 2012 to 368 women. And now we're flat and we're declining. We're now at 365, and many women are leaving this year and next year. Now, there's this is the bad news. No progress in IS-10. So we had 2 in 2007. We have 1 now. The declines in IS-9. There were 10. For a long time, there were 10. And in 2012. But 6 have left this year. 4 of them early because they felt that there was no shot for them to have a career advancement from where they were. And 2 were promoted this year, but they will probably show up in the statistics late now or late next year. The pipeline's been flat since 2007, and it's now declining. The pipeline is levels 5 and 6. Okay, so less and less and less of them are around. And that women are 1 level lower and generally older. So it means that if you think about the ADB internal progression of 3 years as being an optimal, most of the women will age out before they get to the top. So the cement ceiling, we call it, was at IS-7 when I first joined. It's now at IS-9. So once you're an 8, pretty well, going to be tough for you to move. And essentially, we stopped making progress at the end of 2012, and we've been regressing since that time. So who's reviewing this and taking action? As far as I can see of the senior managers, only Steve Groff. He's doing some action plan work with his team to correct it. They're doing some active activities to fix the problem. But this should be a matter for as much concern as loan disbursements are. So I'm going to read out the comments from the last year External Reform and Forum on Gender report. It may sound a little familiar. And this is a quote from the report, which is, by the way, on the open website in ADB. We were briefed by BPMSD on staff on implementation of the diversity and inclusion framework And we share their concerns about the loss of focus and momentum in hiring and promoting international women staff and the limited number of women in pipeline levels for future promotion to senior staff. We note in particular the absence of women in management and the limited number among senior staff. We also note the scarcity of women among the board of directors. The lack of gender balance not only limits the range of perspectives and experiences that inform ADB's work, but also undermines ADB's credibility as a champion of gender equality in the region. We therefore strongly encourage ADB to set more ambitious targets for recruitment, retention, and promotion, and recommend the reintroduction of proactive recruitment and promotion strategies, including expanded outreach. Regular discussions with vice presidents about expected vacancies and strategic recruitment of women at pipeline levels. Does this sound familiar? Doesn't it sound like the 2003 one? Yeah. So it should. Pretty much it says the same things. Board management hiring. The difference is that it also flags our institutional credibility for the first time. And this is on our public website for the entire world to see. Now, here's a press release on International Women's Day that the president signed. Heads of multilateral banks and the IMF have called on all international development and financial institutions to join the effort to promote gender equality across the world. In a statement issued on March 8, 2015, marking the 20th anniversary of the Fourth World Conference on Women in Beijing and International Women's Day, the 7 MDB IMF heads said that while progress had been made in closing gender gaps, especially in the area of maternal mortality and school enrollment, much still remained to be done. Please note the next section. Noting that mounting evidence indicates that organizations with diverse workforces outperform others, the MDB IMF heads reiterated their commitment to promoting diversity in their own organizations, as this would allow them to be more effective in promoting inclusive development. This is what the president committed to the public domain in March. The World Bank, which has far better stats than we do, and a much more active hiring arrangement, has taken much more public action at the top level. On the 3rd of March, the World Bank Group press release says, the external advisory panel, which we have just formed, will review and advise President Jim Young Kim and his senior management team on the organization's strategies, measures, and results to achieve a diverse and inclusive workplace. They will also give counsel on how to address internal and external challenges that impact the bank group's diversity and inclusion efforts. Finally, the panel will provide external perspective to balance the strategies and views of the internal councils. So there's a high-level external committee that's advising the bank at the top level since March. And we can't put anyone in the chair next to the president. So what do we need? This is my perspective on what we need. We need to do what we say we will do. Promote diversity in our organization. Have women in the top at representative numbers. Recognize that there are qualified women around. I cite the Canadian case. We need a champion at the top. Some of us have recommended that Klaus, who's now a senior special advisor to the president, can be our advocate. Sonomi can also perform this role if given access. But president after president has refused it. Why? Why? We need to up the ante on this. We don't need to be embarrassed as an institution, and it will come soon. If we don't act on this, we will look very bad. We need to work a lot harder on the corporate culture. I will tell you a story about the diversity training. There was actually a diversity training in the bank. We actually had committees that were going to do diversity trainings and do it across the bank. I went to the training. I was the only IS. The other people who had been nominated were assistants and analysts to do this training, and they were all female. The two people who delivered the course, an American man and a Japanese man, and the course, by the way, was brilliant, were horrified. They were horrified at who got sent. They were horrified about what that meant about the intents and practice of this. And after that training, HR decided not to deliver this course. And they also decided that those who had been trained as trainers would not deliver it to their teams. That one seems to have been on the back shelf for quite a long time now. We need men on board. A lot more of them. A lot more senior ones. And we need the board to engage. Yesterday, I spoke to someone who works with the board and said, Wouldn't it be rational if we just said to countries, every other person has to be a woman? Do a man, then do a woman, then do a man, then do a woman. And this person told me most of the board doesn't care. They don't care about gender. They don't care about this issue. And because they're men, they care about who comes behind them that they know. I was horrified at this statement, especially coming from someone who I deeply respected. And I thought, how are we going to deal with this problem? We need to create and tell often a lot more stories about what happens when men and women work together here. Like the MDG noting that 3 of his 4 innovation supporting managers that they recognized were female. You should be telling everybody in the bank this story. And you know your own stories of success stories when men and women work together and were successful. Tell them, share them, tell your managers these stories. So, with 5 more days done, there's this thing that managers talk about, the monkey. And what we say is, people will come into the office with a monkey on their back and they will try to leave the monkey with you. And if you're a good manager, you make sure that they leave with the monkey. Well, I'm leaving without the monkey. It's your monkey now. But these are the steps recommended to the president and the MDG by the International Women's Committee very recently. And I'm going to share them with you and encourage you to think about how these can become reality. First, induce temporary special measures by reinstating the gap with a special target of hiring female staff at 50%, hiring high-level women at level 5 and above, extending the women of retiring women who are high-performing, creating opportunities for promotion and cross-departmental transfers for women based on job skills, both in the ADB and prior to the ADB, and simplifying the process for hiring ADB spouses, consultants, and staff. Considering the issue being persistent, ADB needs a gender ombudsman. The role can be given to the existing ombudsman, who can screen the hiring process in an independent office to make sure that female candidates are getting a fair shake. For institutional change, we need to develop audio-video campaign to communicate pro-women messages from the top management, including sharing their successes. Request the president to inform member countries that ADB is short of women at the VP and board levels and seek their active support to send qualified women to ADB. Transparent and compulsory candidate selection through the Assessment Center for Management Positions. Get to know the female staff and provide them with direct feedback. This link that I talked about last week about DGs and directors, boy, you have to have it go both ways. You may solicit them, but if they don't respond to you, it's a problem. Mandatory gender training for all new staff as a condition for completing their probation. And refresher training. Oh, did you forget this part? We saw that you forgot because last year you didn't behave like this. Conduct an independent and detailed analysis of gender data to identify issues and biases for management action, like this level 4, level 5 problem. Okay. You will only get this done, my friends who are carrying the monkey, if you do use every single possible lever. Your own country representatives, the external forum team, our own gender team to align success in gender with women in services is in numbers. Supportive men, particularly influential ones like Steve Groff and Ramesh Subramanian. IWC talks with management, HR, including on the gender action plans, which are currently very, very weak in the departments. And talking all the time about the consequences of the data. What does it mean that we are now half of what we were recruiting 2 years ago? Demonstration to the president that our organization will suffer reputationally very soon unless action is taken now. And he will be the one held responsible for the problem. This is a perpetual issue, and you have to chip away at it over the longer term. Since in this organization, like I've said to you many times, Queen Mary on a good day takes 5 miles. Turning radius, we move slowly here. So you have to keep working on it. And through my years here, I have seen changes do happen, good ones, and progress is made. We do make a difference here, and you can continue it. Best of luck. Thank you very much. Wow, it's a big crowd.
Thank you, Betty.
Those who want to sit, there are some seats in the front. You can come up now. Don't be shy. I'm going to stay and answer questions for a while, too. Okay?
Thank you very much, Betty. It was a really inspiring talk. I'm going to open the floor now to questions, and if I don't have them, then I have some from others who have sent me questions. There's one there. Just hold on.
It's actually not a question, but some beginnings of good news. Thank you very much, first of all, for being who you are and for
Thanks.
having this talk and for always being so incredibly honest and upfront. Two small good points. We were speaking earlier, among others, with Delphine and with the GC, with Chris Stevens and Delphine. And one of the things that we talked about is that the gender and diversity and inclusion agreements that each department has shouldn't be separate agreements anymore, but potentially go back into the actual work plan, which is tangible and
Better, much better.
so that's one of the things that is, I think, in the pipeline, if I'm not jumping the gun here. And the other thing is that OGC has, since the Jeffrey Sachs event and since a fantastic article by one of the VPs of IADB in the Washington Post, OGC has issued guidelines on OGC participation in panels and conferences, etc., and OGC organization of such panels and conferences, and that there always has to be a gender element there.
Good.
OGC has already these guidelines. They have been presented to BPMSD, and I think that BPMSD is going to ask all other departments to also issue those guidelines in their own departments.
Excellent. Congratulations. It's really important.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
Hi, Betty. Shinjini here.
Hi.
I've always come to your talks and I found them very, very inspiring.
Thank you.
And I too come from a long legacy of women's empowerment in my own country. Extremely important to me. What I really want to ask you is that I'm a young person, and at my level, what can I do to be more engaged and to actually bring in some change in this organization? Because where I am, I don't know how much leverage I have or, what things I can do.
The YP Mafia is one of the most powerful of the interest groups in the bank. So, Sean O'Sullivan, Shen Bin Yao, those names sound familiar to you? Those are YPs. You go to them as a YP and say, I'm a YP, what can we do about this? And they will be responsive because a YPs is a mafia. Okay?
Thank you, Betty, not just for this presentation, but for your authentic, consistent, and persistent voice on these matters. Your last slide here, the things you mention here, you've positioned them as things we should do in the future, or things that we need to continue to do harder. The trouble is, these are things which a well-functioning, diverse organisation would have as part of their ongoing normal practice.
Yep.
And we're positioning them today as these are things we should do. So we just need to notice. We need to notice that, that point.
Gee, I didn't want to say the ADB is dysfunctional on gender. I didn't want to say that.
No.
What I wanted to say is the IWC proposed these to the president as immediate actions.
Yes.
I fully support, and I believe every woman and every sensible man in the bank should also support them.
And so do I. But they're things which ought to be common practice.
Yep.
So we need to notice that. I think that an observation is that we have an issue on the culture. You mentioned about culture change. And in this space a while ago, I mentioned we were talking about the the staff engagement survey. And there's an enormously different shared experience between women and men of the organisation. In short, men think it's all fabulous and have a great time, but women aren't so sure. So when you've got people in power who are having a great time and can't see a problem, we really have to think about how we progress, because we know from organisational data that people who are having a great time and are in power and don't think there's a problem are very unlikely to willingly change.
Slavery was like that too, right? Slavery was like that
Yeah.
too.
So I think I really
Extreme
think,
example, but
yeah, I'm just would support all of these, but particularly bringing back the targets, because what people think in their own minds is one thing, but action is the other. And if we can push that change, I think that's a really immediate objective for us. And I'd fully support that we push on that one.
good, thanks. In the back.
Hi, thank you very much, Betty, for doing this talk. I'm one of the co-chair of the IWC, and as an appeal to all of you here today, if you really are passionate and want to be a part of making changes, please come forward and identify yourself to Manisha, myself, or Irum, or Nana Sotantri, and let us know if you want to volunteer on the board. We are looking for nominations now, and we'll have elections soon, and we'll have an upcoming AGM. And I think the YP question, asking what you can do, do come forward and join us. And we do hold events like this. And we're very grateful that Betty talked. And also, if you do have to share, we can to share. And men, too, can speak up on some of the issues. I think the changes that has been lobbied with ADB and has been brought about over the years, actually, some of the men, as an example, the time working, is some of the things that I think some of the men are concerned with as well, because stress and heart attacks and things like that from working, from the culture of our institution. How do we create a cultural change, help both men and institutions? So I'll leave the floor for others to speak.
So while the
We're
mic
carrying on with questions.
Okay. While the mic is moving, I'm just going to tell you that I was a co-chair of the IWC with a board advisor for 2 years. And it was really effective because she had immediate access to the managers.
Thank you very much, Betty, for this inspiring talk. It's very important that you continuously speak out. Thank you very much for that. My name is Veronika Baumgartner. I'm one of the 3 female board members here at the ADB. So since yesterday we are 3. We have a Thai ED, and of course we have several advisors, female advisors. So there's the inner circle and there's the outer circle. So female are present there. And also I can't help but commenting on your saying that the board doesn't care about the terrible gender situation here at ADB. This is not true. So it might be that not every single board member has this subject close to their heart, but there are a couple of board members who do care and who continuously push this forward. And we have just started another round of discussions with management about this. And we try to hold management. We would like to see, as you just suggested, see clear targets introduced and hold management accountable for reaching them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good news.
Okay, I'm going to give you all a question that has come up to IWC many, many a time. And one of it is that while we say women managers are essential in ADB, we have heard and seen that some have experienced that women managers don't actually help women. In fact, they're even harder on women. What is your take on that, Betty?
It can happen. Sometimes it's the queen bee problem, as was been reported in the Lean-In study, that if there's a woman at the top, sometimes she feels threatened by other women who have potential and power. But I think that here, it's much more that our managers are homegrown, and the homegrowing is not very good. I was a manager before I came here, and I got some pretty good training. Then I had some pretty good mentors who helped me make not egregious mistakes, so I was a little bit better at this. I think that one of the challenges of being a manager is sometimes you have to be tough on your people. And sometimes those people are women, and they take it personally. So there is the part that says, how do I foster this person when they're struggling? There's another part that says, how do I address this person when they're making mistakes and doing damage and they're not listening? So it is really a two-sided coin. It does happen. So how do you solve it is the question. And as a person who is responsible to a manager, somebody who you're working with, I think that the best answer is go to them and say, I am trying to do my job properly. I'm struggling. Can you help me so we have a better relationship? And then also get some coaching from other women managers that you think are good at this. You know, I'm struggling. How do I deal with this? I've had managers come to me with this question. I've had staff come to me with this question. Sometimes it was the manager and staff who were in the same place. And it's a miscommunication in that case. So, yeah, get coaching, get help. Go and ask the person and say, I want this relationship to work better. It's really important to me. How do we do it? What's happening here that I don't see? Now, last week I talked about the black box. Black box is all the stuff you don't know about yourself that's killing you. Sometimes it's relationships with women. That happens.
Are there any more questions? Okay, Betty, we're going to say thank you very much. Goodbye, and do
Thanks,
keep in
guys.
touch with us.
Good luck with this.
Thank you.